Good evening. Also tonight, wasteful subsidy schools has been listed by the Hong Kong government. The state government has released the details of its plans to ban prostitution in residential areas and give police extra powers to shut down illegal brothels. Our reporter Blake Curtis joins us now from the Parliament House. Blake, what have you been told there?
Yes, Ivan, good evening. Well, it's the world's oldest profession, usually operating unregulated in the shadows of Perth suburbs. But that could all change very soon, with the government proposing new laws which would give police extra powers to shut down illegal brothels and move licensed brothels outside of residential areas.
The new proposal outlined this week would give the state government the ultimate power to decide where brothels are located and the laws they operate under. The Attorney General Christian Porter says the laws will help the community. Under the proposed model, the operator, manager and prostitutes within a brothel would be licensed by the Director of the Department of Racing, Gaming and Liquor. High security background checks are not out of the question. Applicants would be required to undergo palm printing and fingerprinting at the discretion of the department. The opposition says it is a huge backflip on the policy the government took to the last election. Shadow Attorney General John Quigley says the opposition will not support the policy until it's seen the draft legislation. The penalty for operating or managing an unlicensed brothel would be up to 3 years in jail. The Labor Party will wait to see the proposed legislation in full.
From Parliament House, Ivan, it's back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Blake. To other stories now. Tough new laws targeting drink and drug effect drivers was introduced into the State Parliament on Wednesday. Oscar Bird begins our coverage.
Under the Road Traffic Amendment Bill, drivers of taxis, buses and heavy trucks will not be allowed to have any alcohol in the system. The zero tolerance policy would also apply to P-plate drivers and holders of extraordinary licences. Other changes include increasing fines to drivers caught with a blood alcohol level in excess of 0.05 to $500 and doubling the fine for drivers who test positive to drugs. Anyone caught tries to drink driving would also have their licence suspended for 6 months rather than 3. The government says the proposed changes are based on recommendations from the Road Safety Council. Oscar Bird, DHK News.
An RAC business survey has found traffic jams are costing Perth businesses tens of thousands of dollars. Isabel Huther files this report.
The RAC says that the population growth caused by the state's strong resource sector is increasing traffic hours and also forcing businesses to turn down work.
The RAC's Matt Brown says some businesses reported congestion was costing them up to $100,000 a year. He said that it is consistent with federal estimates, which puts the cost of congestion to the Perth economy at the figure of about $1.1 billion a year. 56% of respondents said they were not confident the state government had adequate plans to tackle congestion. Mr. Brown says the survey indicates a critical need for new investment in the state transport system.
Isabel Huther, DHK News.
The federal government has secured passage through the Senate of its legislation to split Telstra's wholesale and retail operations. It allowed Telstra's retail and wholesale arms to be separated, which is a key plank in the national broadband network establishment and will cost the government 35.7 billion Australian dollars. BRAYDEN Networks has the details.
The legislation passed the Senate 30 votes to 28 after days of angry debate with the support of the Greens and independent senators Nick Xenophon and Stephen Fielding.
Communications Minister Stephen Conroy said the government has achieved historic reform in Australia's national interest. The opposition is staunchly opposed to the NBN and unsuccessfully sought to delay passage of today's legislation until next year. Last week, the coalition failed to pass a bill in the lower house to refer the NBN to the Productivity Commission for scrutiny. It also wanted a cost-benefit analysis to be conducted. Similar moves in the Senate by the coalition today, as well as an attempt to put off the vote until late this afternoon, also failed to gain support. On Wednesday, Prime Minister Julia Gillard was forced to release a summary of the NBN business plan in return for Senator Nick Xenophon's support for the bill. BRAYDEN Edwards, DHK News.
The Hong Kong Education Bureau has released the names of direct subsidy schools accused in an audit report of wasting money. The report has revealed one school has spent 71 million Hong Kong dollars on investments. See Alpro reports.
The report revealed that one school, Good Hope, had spent 71 million Hong Kong dollars on investment. Also named in the audit report are Diocesan Boys School, Yinghua College, St. Paul's School Educational College, New Method College, and Delia Memorial School. LegCo's Public Accounts Committee had earlier called for the names of the schools to be published. The PAC's chairman, Philip Wong, said it was the first time in his memory that the committee had made such a request while it's holding an inquiry, but he said such a move is required by public interest. Sierra Pro, DHK News, reporting from Hong Kong.
Heavy snow has turned UK into a winter wonderland. Severe weather warnings and widespread icy road forecasts has been issued throughout the country.
Warnings of sub-zero temperatures came as the big chill brought parts of the country to a standstill after the earliest widespread snow for 17 years. London and the southeast, the southwest, East Midlands, Yorkshire and Humber, and the northeast of England have all alerted to widespread icy roads until 11 in the morning on Saturday by the Met Office. The northeast, Yorkshire and Humber, East Midlands and the southwest were also braced for heavy snow. Wales and Northern Ireland were warned to expect icy roads, while Scotland was also forecast heavy snow and drifting snow as more flurries were on the way. Forecasters say the cold snap was set to tighten its grip, blanketing swaths of the country in white by the middle of next week. This is Herbert Thomas reporting for DHK News.
Hundreds of gang members have been filmed fleeing from a Rio shantytown after police invaded the slums. Brazil elite police units have borrowed Navy tanks to rumble through the heavy-faulted valley in the Brazilian city in an effort to apprehend drug gang leaders blamed for 5-day widespread violence as a scroll of armed youth fled to the neighbor area. Blake Curtis has more.
Elite police units in borrowed Navy tanks rumbled through a heavily fortified favela in the Brazilian city in an effort to apprehend drug gang leaders blamed for 5 days of widespread violence, as scores of armed youths fled to a neighbouring area. Authorities said the gangs had erected roadblocks on a major highway to rob motorists, torched more than 40 cars and buses, and fired at police outposts, all to protest against a security program that has been pushing for them from the favelas where they've held sway for decades. The officers arrived in the Villa Cruzeiro shantytown under the cover of police helicopters and amid the rattle of high-caliber gunfire, despite the gang members' efforts to block access with burning vehicles. As police entered, alleged gang members were seen fleeing down jungle-covered hills across an area known as the Green Hell to a neighbouring gang stronghold Alamio. At least 30 people have died, many believed to be suspected drug gang members, and more than 150 suspected arrested in police raids at nearly 30 shantytowns in the northern and western parts of Rio. Authorities have established 13 permanent police posts in the favelas as part of their efforts to clean up the seaside city before it hosts the World Cup football final in 2014. Police have not released the identities of those killed, but spokesman Enrique de Limo Castro Savario did acknowledge on Wednesday that bystanders would be affected by the battles. Blake Curtis, DHK News.
Flood victims in a northern Colombian town have been forced to move to the local cemetery as it becomes the only dry land they could find in the area. Richard Lee reports.
The 260 families of La Loma, Colombia were forced out of their houses after days of heavy rain left them uninhabitable. Families said that they had been living in the graveyard for 10 days. Children were filmed playing among the headstones and monuments. Rainfall caused by the ocean phenomenon La Nina has left at least 154 dead and has affected about 1.3 million residents. It has caused landslides and flooding in 28 of Colombia's 32 states. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos has applied for an emergency loan from the World Bank of $150 million to help victims. Mr. Santos said that $25 million from funds confiscated from drug traffickers will be used to fix some of the damage the rain has left. Richie Lee, DHK News.
20 people have been killed and more than 20 injured when a bus veered onto the oncoming traffic in Chile. South American correspondent Brian Pierce reporting from San Diego.
20 people have been killed and more than 20 injured when the bus turned into oncoming traffic in Chile. Officials say the bus was trying to pass another vehicle when it slammed head-on into a truck outside the Chilean capital, Santiago. Both vehicles plugged off the highway into a ravine on Tuesday. Authorities said the toll could rise given the serious nature of some of the injuries. At least 8 other people were in critical conditions, officials said. Rodrigo Albarran, an executive of Turbus Company, said the bus had left the small coastal town of Yoyeo, heading for Santiago with 24 people on board. It was not immediately clear how many people were aboard at the time of the crash, because it had picked up and dropped off passengers along the way. The drivers of both vehicles were killed along with several bus passengers, many of whom were workers and students headed to the capital. Brian Ramirez, DHK News.
Tension continues to grow between North and South Korea this week, following North Korea's artillery attack onto the South Korean island. BRAYDEN Edward reports.
2 soldiers and 2 civilians were killed, and dozens of homes were destroyed in the airstrike on the island of Yeonpyeong on Tuesday. Nations around the world have condemned the attack, with Australian Foreign Minister Kevin Rudd saying the situation was bad for the stability and security of the region. Evidence is emerging that the attack is bound up in the country's leadership succession. According to North Korean media, the country's leader Kim Jong-il and his son and heir Kim Jong-un visited the artillery base which attacked the south just hours before the shelling started. This would suggest that orders for the artillery attack came right from the top and could be a way for North Korea's leader-in-waiting to bolster his military credentials. South Korea's defense minister has resigned after facing criticism that his government responded weakly to North Korea's artillery attack. South Korean soldiers responded to the attack by firing 80 shells back across the border, but for some politicians this was not enough, saying there should have been a retaliation airstrike on North Korea. BRAYDEN Edwards, DHK News.
Cambodian Prime Minister paid his respect on Thursday during a national mourning to honour more than 350 people who were killed in a deadly stampede in Phnom Penh. Richard Lee reports.
Accompanied by his wife and government officials, Hun Sen placed incense sticks by a reef at the site of Monday's stampede. The tragedy unfolded after crowds celebrating a water festival flocked to an island for a free concert and spilled onto a bridge to the mainland. An estimated 7,000 to 8,000 people were streaming over the bridge that connects the island to the mainland when it began to sway, according to local reports. According to an investigation, the swaying of the bridge loaded with thousands of people sparked a mass panic. An official report, however, has not yet been released. Information Minister Q. Khanharif said on Wednesday the official death toll was 351 dead, with 395 injured. Prime Minister Hun Sen described the stampede as the biggest tragedy since the Communist Khmer Rouge reign of terror, which killed estimated 1.7 million people in the late 1970s. Richie Lee, DHK News.
And finally tonight, Christmas is arriving soon. A French chocolater has built a 10-meter chocolate Christmas tree for the charity. So let's take a look. And that's all from the DHK News Desk. Have a great week. Pleasant viewing and good night.